What's up, guys? Welcome back to the question where you have the questions and I have the answers. And today I'm answering the question which has been so kindly posed in the comments, which is, how do you maintain a relationship while being asexual? For those of you who don't know, I've been in quite a few relationships in my young life, and they've had varying degrees of success and they've had varying degrees of affecting my asexuality. I think personally, from what I have learned, my biggest piece of advice for maintaining a relationship as asexual is the same advice that I would give to people who are not asexual as well, and that is communication and listening to not only your partner but also listening to yourself. Especially when you're an asexual dating allosexuals or non-asexuals, I think a big difference between the ace community and the non-ace community is that while the ace community has gotten very good at breaking down attraction types and being very aware and attuned to what kind of attraction they are feeling towards different people, allosexuals also do this, but they're less in tune with it. And so a lot of times when I'm talking with allosexuals, even people that I have dated, they act as though, or they speak as though, and I think it's because they believe this because we are in a hypersexual society and we are taught to believe this, that sex is like the highest form of intimacy. Like there's definitely an attraction hierarchy and a relationship hierarchy that we exist in, where like a monogamous sexual romantic relationship is the highest form that you can achieve. And so a lot of times when people are dating or looking for romantic relationships, they're also assuming or implying a sexual relationship as well. And so I'm not asking anybody to out themselves if they're not ready, but I think if you are aware that you are asexual, especially if you are sex repulsed, putting out there and just communicating that, hey, I am asexual and maybe I don't want to have sex or I don't feel sexual attraction, communicating that right off the bat I think is a good idea. But also like holding firm in your beliefs. Another question that I get asked a lot from allosexuals is, well, you mean you wouldn't even have sex with your partner if it was going to make them happy? Like, what if you just want to make them feel good? And that is a valid question, and some asexuals and even some non-asexuals do things that they don't normally want to do to make other people feel good. That is a decision that you get to make. Do not let anybody pressure you into doing that, because I know this is about maintaining a relationship. However, your personal safety, your personal comfort, and your well-being and happiness should not be neglected for the maintenance of a relationship. If you have to hurt yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, sexually in order to make someone else happy, that's not a good relationship, and I advise getting out of it. But yeah, I'd say constant communication about your boundaries, because boundaries shift, boundaries change. What you're comfortable with, what you're willing to do with somebody shifts and change as you go through different partners, as you learn more about yourself. I personally would not shy away from experimentation, but once again, listen to yourself. If this is something that you're very uncomfortable with, don't do it. Don't try let someone peer pressure you or try to talk you into something that you really don't want to do. So I think having those regular conversations about how you're feeling, how your relationship to sex is, what you view as sex, also I think is a really important question, because, as an asexual, I believe, and I firmly say that we are a part of the queer community, we experience sex and differently than what is shown to us. We experience attraction and intimacy differently from what is shown to us. And so having conversations about, like, if you are to have sex or if you want to be intimate, what would that look like for you? My current QPR platonic partner and I, she's allo. Well, she's figuring it out, but she's allo. She has sex. That is intimate for her. However, what's also intimate for us is cuddling on the couch, like just being there, holding each other. That's us also intimate, but always talking about asking permission before doing anything. especially if you have sensory issues, if you have any kind of trauma around being touched, in any kind of way, always asking before doing something and rarely ever assuming, that something is okay because it was okay once. Sometimes you're not in the mood. Sometimes you have other stuff going around and you don't want to do it. And this applies to both asexuality and asexual relationships, but also non-asexual relationships. I think having that kind of communication and that understanding of each other is important for maintaining any kind of relationship. I think also something that's important for asexuals is understanding that because we are queer, we are going to experience relationships in a very different way than we are told we are supposed to. For example, queer platonic relationships, does not fall within the categories of romantic, of best friend, of sexual partner. It falls into some weird gray category which cisnormative, amatonormative, or allonormative society has. And so I think also learning to deconstruct these necessities in your mind, that my relationship needs to look a certain way, that I need to do these certain things, that I need to hit these relationship goal markers, and just, go with how I feel, listen to my partner and how they feel, not being afraid to really explore what the relationship looks like for you specifically. Because I think a lot of times, we perform, we put on these faces, we have to try and appease society in a way. And something that I don't think we talk about enough is that we do that in relationships as well, is a lot of what we do in relationships is very performative to try and show into society that we are doing something successfully, that we are valid human beings, that we are doing everything, that needs to be done. And you don't have to, a lot of people in the queer community that I've spoken to, they're talking about how, kissing is overrated, but kissing and making out is one of those first steps that people have for relationships. It's a really big milestone to have that first kiss. It's a really important milestone to have that makeout session in a car or a movie theater or a bathroom or the side of the road, And I think just accepting that you not having those same relationship milestones doesn't mean that you are any less worthy of having an intimate relationship or not having an intimate relationship if you don't want to. I know this is going off less of asexual, but, aromanticism. There's a big subgroup called loveless aromantics who don't want intimate relationships with people. And so I think also accepting and talking about what do you want your relationship to look like? What do you want out of the relationship? And what do you not want out of the relationship? And I want to say that I've always been upfront about my boundaries in relationships, but in a lot of my earlier relationships, I haven't been, just because I was still figuring my stuff out. And sadly, my partners at the time were not as patient with me as I wish they had been. So it's been a rough road learning what I do and do not like. And, now I'm 20, which is still pretty young. But, society says that I should have experience with stuff by now, because you are expected to start having relationship experience at a very young age in American culture. But I'm going to college and I have people my age who still haven't had their first kiss, who still haven't had their first serious partner. And that's okay. I think a lot of what it takes to maintain a relationship as an asexual is really honoring your asexual identity, listening to it, and making sure that the pressure to conform to society never outweighs you wanting to be true to yourself and keeping yourself safe and doing stuff that you like. Not rushing into doing things, not any of the stuff that I just said. And that can be applied to asexuals and non-asexuals. And also, I feel don't feel pressure to date allosexuals. Don't feel pressure to only date asexuals. People have their preferences. I know that there are bisexuals out there who refuse to date cis straight women, or bisexuals who refuse to date cis straight men. This is completely valid. If you're asexual and you think that it will be 100 times easier to date someone else who is asexual, then only date asexuals. you know? Go for it. Do anything that keeps you safe. You are allowed to have preferences. Just as long as they're not like prejudiced and inherently, racist preferences, but you're allowed to have preferences that you feel keep you safe, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it is about you and you being comfortable. Um, However, if you are not asexual and you are dating an asexual, um, I feel like, once again, listen to them, ask about their boundaries, ask about what you want. And if it doesn't gonna work, and if you think that sex is something that you really want in a relationship, and maybe this person's sex repulsed, or maybe this person isn't that sex positive, find someone else. Don't try and make them feel bad for not wanting to have sex with you. Don't try and make them have sex with you. And this once again goes for people in non-asexual relationships too. Like, these are just generally very good rules that I think the ace community is way more attuned to, because we've had to think about this a lot more than allosexuals have. But all of these pieces of advice can apply to anybody. And it's scary to go out there, knowing that this thing is different about you, and, it may not be visible, but it's something that when it comes to dating becomes very apparent and very important. And that's terrifying. And I know that there's a lot of fear of like, it makes dating impossible, it makes long-term relationships feel impossible, but I guess like, don't give up. I know it feels really easy to just delve into that hopeless, depressive feeling of like, I'm gonna be alone forever. And if that's not something that you want, then that's okay. But I think also take a time and sit back and really realize, are your insecurities and fears actually yours? Or is it just insecurity and fear that society is putting on you because you're not hitting those milestones? Every so often I'll be like, oh my God, like nobody loves me in a romantic way, and I'm not gonna be in a long-term relationship, and I'm just gonna die alone. And then I'm like, well, I'm aromantic. So that's not something that I actually want, but society makes me feel really bad for not having that. Same thing with like a sexual relationship. Every so often I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna die a virgin. I'm so scared. But then it's like, but I'm sex repulsed, like even if somebody offered to have sex with me, I'd be like, oh my God, human body, no. So, like, I think really just like listen to yourself, listen to your partner, and have that open line of communication whenever something happens. I know it feels like a lot of hard work, but I think that's also the reality, is that relationships are really hard work, and it's not just the over dramatic, oh my God, I'm gonna move across the country and you have to convince me to stay hard work that, romance movies frame it as. But it is having a lot of like hard conversation. You do have to be vulnerable to an extent, like, once again, never push yourself to where you feel uncomfortable. But also, to maintain the communication, it's not as easy as just being like, I want X, Y, and Z, People have pasts. People are complicated and emotional creatures. And so we have to be willing to open ourselves up to a point in order to get what we want, and to make sure the people that we care about, feel heard and feel seen and feel loved, and so on and so forth. I hope that was helpful. So please let me know if it was. If you have any more questions, if you have any disagreements, please comment below. I love hearing from you guys. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your summer. If you are a college student and you're starting up school soon, I'm sorry. Yeah, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. So long, and thanks for all the fish.